Really nothing on that wall. Anyways, it's Leo WT here with a little Friday video for you. I got like, you know how I get fired up sometimes. Like, I get passionate, let's say. My good friend Bree was in the shop today and she was like, do you have to get this out before you go home so you don't annoy Elle? And I was like, possibly that might be a thing for me. But I had some thoughts I just got to get off my chest, you know what I'm saying? So, as you know, I don't really embrace social media drama as something that really impacts me personally, but I engage with the voices that I hear on social media. How's that sound? Does that sound fair? And I'm not, if you feel like trolling me, that's fine. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, but I will continue to like raise important conversations as they happen. And so I saw this really, if we're gonna say it, it's like a downright disturbing thing that I saw on Facebook today, and I wanted to share it with you guys because I don't want to be disturbed alone. You know what I'm saying? By guys, I mean gender neutral guys. I mean folks. I apologize if I have alienated anybody with my choice of language there momentarily, but I wanted to share with you folks something that I found online today. So we're gonna do that. So I found this little pic. This is actually a craft that someone has been making in our area. This is a craft that someone is selling from Eldred, Pennsylvania. I didn't post the name because I don't want you guys to go crazy on this person. I don't want you to pop off at this person because, listen, healthy people attack problems. Unhealthy people attack people. We're not about attacking people here. We're about attacking a problem. And a problem is that people really believe in this stuff. People believe in this stuff. They don't believe that it's this woman who made this said, oh, she just can't breathe in a mask. It doesn't have any connection to the George Floyd protest. To which I said, horse shit. Also, apparently this person is not sure what queer or what critical race theory is. And it got me thinking, maybe we should talk about critical race theory because apparently this person just does not believe it exists. What'd she say? She said no critical race theory. Okay, well here's the thing, is that critical race theory does not need your affirmation to validate it, if you will. So we're going to talk for a minute about critical race theory. So critical race theory is, and I am not an expert on this. I am not a historian on this. I'm simply telling you what I've learned through just studying things, right? So I wanted to share that with you. So critical race theory, I'm by no means an expert, and I'm not going to be giving you a full explanation here. But critical race theory is a theory that sprung out of legal studies, right? I'm going to list all the sources that I use for you below, but I've got a couple quotes for you and a couple ideas for you. So critical race theory, which comes from critical legal studies, right? It comes out as an offshoot of the legal profession. And critical race theory argues that social problems are influenced and created by social structures and cultural assumptions, more so than individual and psychological factors. So what that means is race is a social construct, and that social construct is detrimental to people in society as societal structures deem them less than or other, right? So let me break this down for you. All right, race is not a thing. Let that sit in for however long you need it to. But race isn't a thing. Race doesn't exist. Race is created. Race is a social construct. Let me further illustrate this to you by the idea of this, right? So, if you are white, where is the land of white that you came from? That's right. You cannot go back to the land of white. White doesn't exist biologically. Up until critical race theory came up and was being talked about, people just assumed that race was a biological mandate. But the thing is that race it's not a biological thing. It's not a biological element. You're not imbued with certain qualities because of your race. right? You're not good at basketball because you are black. You are good at basketball because you lived in an area where you likely were in an urban center and basketball was your hobby, right? There's a study out about this. I'll try to link it in the comments. But you're not good at basketball because you're black, right? You're good at basketball because all your friends played it, so you played it, and you had a little bit of a genetic outline in terms of lung capacity, and so you did this and you did that, and then you're smart, and then boom, good at basketball, right? It's not because you're black. And like white people, you're not extra smart because you're white. You were afforded certain opportunities because you came from a family that had a history of wealth that afforded you the opportunity to go for extra higher education, and then you look like you're smarter, but it's not because you're white, because white isn't a biological thing. It's a socially made up category. So you're not imbued with certain qualities because of your race. Right? And the only reason that race has power is because society imbues race with power. That's not racist to admit, right? That is just a fact. Our society is structured in certain ways so that the playing field is not level for people of all races, and we can blow that out into orientation and gender, but we're not. We're focusing on race right now, okay? Society makes it easier or more advantaged or more advantageous for certain people to succeed in certain ways. We've heard of redlining, right? We've heard of banks not giving loans to people who wanted to buy in predominantly black areas. In Philadelphia, in the early, I want to say it's like 1800s, W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a race scholar, who was the first African-American person to earn a PhD from Harvard, and he did a study called the Philadelphia Negro, where he examined the life of black people in Philadelphia. And he examined and personally interviewed over 9,000 people. And he found that in Philadelphia in this time period, black people were not allowed in trade unions. So they worked in more hazardous positions. They were not allowed in certain jobs, and that made them have lower incomes, lower health expectancies, and they were more prone to need to find finances and money in other ways, right? It wasn't because they were black, they were not good welders. It was because societally they were deemed as people like to believe certain things about black people's work ethic. And so they conflated the color of their skin with a race, with a trait, right? So the power was in the hands of the society. And W.E.B. Du Bois was one of the first people to start this conversation that led to what we now know as critical race theory. The thing is, race doesn't exist. And it is not racist to talk about critical race theory. That's one of my least favorite conversations to have, because people will say, oh, having a conversation about racism is racist, or you keep talking about it, so you are perpetuating racism. No. Talking about critical race theory is acknowledging the ways in which our society is structured in an inequitable manner that affords certain people of certain skin colors benefits because somewhere down the line it was believed they had the extra advantage. They were allowed to live in a district where there was a better school. They had better health care. They had heat in their houses so their children weren't sick, so they didn't miss school, because when you miss one day of school, your rate of failure goes up by more than 20%. The statistical chance of you failing that year goes up by something like 20%. Okay? There are all sorts of social structures in place, and talking about them and calling them out is not racist. Hear me now. Critical race theory, the admission of a society that has structures that reward and discredit people based on the false assumption of race, is not racist. It is not racist to call out a racist system. And the idea behind critical race theory is that the societal structures and the societal attitudes have more of an impact than individual behavior or psychology. No matter how good a black person is, their chances of being murdered at the hands of the police are astronomically higher. Fight me! I dare you! No matter, okay, I'm going to give you an example, right? And this is an example based on gender, but before I transitioned, I was very visibly a lesbian. I got pulled over for doing 26 and a 25. And I was given a ticket that cost me over $200. And it didn't even get to me on time, and it almost ended up costing me my license. Okay? Since I have transitioned, and I look like I do, and my wife is female presenting and is biologically female, people assume that I am straight. I have not received a singular ticket since looking like a cisgender male. Boom. There are internal biases, and you can't tell me there's not, because I've lived them, and I'm still white. Whatever that means, right? If you're a white person, please do not come at me and say critical race theory doesn't exist. Please do not come at me and tell me that it is racist for people to speak about their lived experiences of being a black person in America. That's not racist. You literally cannot imagine what it's like to live as a black, brown, indigenous, Asian person of color in America unless you are them. Okay? I would consider myself an ally, and I can still only be marginally aware because it's not my lived experience. So I must listen and I must learn. That, my friends, is what we need to be doing. It is not racist to try to deconstruct systemic racism. It is not racist to talk about race. The only people out here trying to say that critical race theory is racist is white people. And white is, once again, not a thing. So white people are benefiting from critical race theory, but then they're also saying that it doesn't exist. This is not a commentary on a person either. This is a commentary on a system. This is not about an individual white person or an individual black person. It's about a system that is undergirded by inequities and unequal distribution of power. Period. Period. If you want to talk about inequitable distribution of power, why have there been black citizens since the beginning of the United States of America? And we're just now seeing black people in the Oval Office. Inequitable distribution of power. It's written into our Constitution. It's there. Period. If you will choose to see it. Critical race theory exists. Whether little old Deborah from Eldred thinks so and paints it on a sign, or whether she doesn't, it's real. And it exists. And the thing is that critical race theory would have us examine the subconscious underpinnings of systemic racism that exist in our society so that we can create a more equitable society. Okay? White is not a thing. To be honest, black is not a thing. Now, I think black culture in America is a thing because black people were stripped away from their heritage. Some black people cannot find their heritage, or it's very difficult for them to find their heritage pre-slavery. That's a different thing than whiteness. Okay? But even black is not an ethnicity. Race and ethnicity are two separate things, right? Ethnicity is where you came from. What's your heritage? Race in America is white or black. And the problem with that is that isn't even all it's encompassing. Because there is not white skin tone and black skin tone. Even within whiteness, there is not like just one skin tone of white people, right? My daughter is like translucent white and also Puerto Rican and Native. Like what? Okay, right? But even within blackness, there's different skin tones, there's different ethnicities, there's different backgrounds. And whiteness, the insidious nature of whiteness, is that whiteness is about assimilation. And that, my friends, it should be more disturbing than anything. Because the fact remains, whether you want it to or not, we all have individual characteristics. We are all individual people. You know what I mean? This is a thing that is happening in the real world right now. Period. And I'm trying to pull up a quote here real quick. I don't know if I can pull it up. But I want to give due credit to the author. But I was listening to a podcast called the Mestizo Podcast this morning, and on it was a scholar, and I'm blanking on his name right now, so you're gonna have to forgive me. But on the Mestizo podcast, there was a scholar. He's an African American male scholar that works within evangelicalism, and I hear James Jennings, and he talks about this idea in his book, The Church After Whiteness. And he talks about how the idea of whiteness was the idea of assimilation. Because even at the beginning of race, when race began to be asserted as a construct, or as a thing, right? We didn't admit it was a construct, we just said it was a thing. When race began to be asserted as an idea, Irish people weren't considered white, okay? But the thing, especially in America, especially in a nation where we want to make things white or black, is that white is assumed to be the aspiration. You should always want to be more white. People do this all the time when it comes to English language, like, oh, your English isn't good, right? Or, you're in America, speak English. Newsflash, the first people in America didn't call it America, and they spoke native languages. Okay? So white is an assimilationist identity that we're told we should aspire to. I am a victim of race. Not because I suffer from racism. Please hear that. I'm not saying I'm a victim of racism. I'm a victim of race. I have no idea where my family is from. And I'm having the hardest time finding out. Race, the limited concept of race, it can be harmful to all of us. So let's start talking about it instead of refusing to admit that it exists. It's a thing. I don't want to be an assimilationist. I'm a person. I'm an individual person. And don't come at me about identity politics. We'll do a whole nother video on that. But here's the thing. Individuals are valid, and they shouldn't be confined by social constructs. Because social constructs are made up in the ideas of man. They're not a biological mandate. I could go on and on and on about ideas that are social constructs. Race, gender, ableism, biological sex to some degree, right? These are all things that have elements of social construction to them. When they are constructed by society, it means that they are not the same across the board. They are not the same in each society. So to say something is innately masculine is a social construct. Wearing a dress is feminine. Okay, here, maybe. Scottish men wore kilts for the longest time, still do. It's a cultural thing. That social construct is a white Western American social construct. It's different in a different society, right? So stop treating social constructs like they're biological mandates. Stop being assimilationists. We are all unique and we are all diverse, and guess what? That's a strength. Stop burying your heads in the sand and saying that talking about racism is racism, because it can't be. Racism is based on an inequitable distribution of power. Within the system of racism that we have in America, white race is privileged. It's privileged. Black race is not privileged. Black race, people of the black race, are put at a systemic disadvantage. They do not hold the power. Racism is based on power. You cannot be talking about being black cannot be racist. Okay? Right? You can be bigoted and you can be prejudiced and you can be biased and you can be ignorant, but you cannot be racist, right? Like that is not a racist thing. You can say racist things, like a Mexican person can say a racist thing to a black person, but it's a difference in the distribution of power. And so black people cannot be racist towards white people. Brown people cannot be racist towards white people. They can be prejudiced. You can be prejudiced. You can be biased. You can be bigoted. You don't get a pass because you're a minority. You can still be an asshole minority, okay? But you can't be racist. It's physically impossible. I'd like to think we've learned some things today. I'd like to think we've talked about some things today. But please, please, please understand that whether you believe it exists or not, especially if you're a white person, is a moot point. Because the social sciences, the data, the research, the studies, they are out there. Read them. I dare you. I dare you to read them with an open mind. I was a racist person. I was a racist person by proxy of being a white person in a racist system that perpetuated the system without even knowing it. I wasn't even a bad person. I was just a racist person. It's not scary. No lightning is striking me. No one's here with pitchforks to say, kill the racists. No. I just realized that I was a person who benefited inequitably from for something I did not do. I did not choose to be white. I did not choose to have this melanin, this level of melanation. I did not choose that, but I benefit from it. That makes me complicit in systemic racism. Now, I know better, so now I must do better, as Maya Angelou says, right? Now, we must learn about critical race theory. We must learn about the daily lived lives of people who are different than us. Because if not, ignorance is not a pass anymore. There's enough information out there to show that people whose skin color is different have different lives because of systemic oppression and systemic racism. It's real. It's real. It's real. It's real. White privilege is real. I don't care if you think it exists or not, right? It's real. Just be a decent human and try to learn something about people that are different than you. And stop being scared of difference. Stop disavowing the idea of difference because it makes you uncomfortable. Please, 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 please educate yourself, friends. Learn about critical race theory. Look up critical legal theory. Look up the history of whiteness. Look up the African diaspora. Look up the idea of colonization. See how Western European people colonized nation after nation after nation. See how the church is complicit in genocide on a cyclical repeating basis. Learn these things. Grow from them. No one is judging you because of what you don't know. But we are judging you when you choose to plug your ears and bury your head in the sand and move on without a consideration of the other. Because the reality is a lot of us were others in one way, shape, or form. Please, stop running away from difference and diversity. It's not scary and it's not bad. It's beautiful and it's vibrant. And it brings us all together when we listen to another person and we hear their narrative. Critical race theory is real. Racism is real. Race is not real. It is a social construct. But we are responsible for tearing down harmful social constructs. Slavery was a social construct. It was our responsibility to tear it down. We've done a piss poor job of it. After the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, it was still 2 years before all the slaves in America were free. 2 years. People were declared free on June 19th. But for so many people in our country, June 20th has never come. Okay? Be aware, be educated, be compassionate, be intersectional, and please, let's all of us be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. This is my TED Talk. Formats and some new ways of engagement and some new videos. This weekend, I'm going to be talking about hip-hop culture, the Black church, being Black in America. Maybe we'll dive into some critical race theory. I've got a critical race theory video coming up. We've got some people coming on who are, I have a friend who is a Black rabbi scholar, well-known, coming on. I just got word today that we'll be bringing on some LGBTQ Amish and Anabaptist folks. I'm trying to do the work to make this an intersectional place. Everybody's story is welcome here. The only thing that is not welcome is ignorance, bigotry, and hatred.